The wrestling business, while fruitful, can be quite costly on the human condition, depending on what decisions the wrestler makes.
But I went broke in those 3 years. I went broke. My house got foreclosed on. I lost everything. I was in debt again. I was broke again. I was selling things here and there.
Talent who make their fortune back in the day can lose it all in a relatively short time.
I mean, I went from having 2 houses within probably 10 months. I'd lost all of it.
Perhaps due to a divorce, addiction, or simply fading away from the spotlight, never to return.
Dog forgot one thing: you can't do what the white man do and keep your job.
For some, there is light at the end of the tunnel, while for others, it's a tragic end amidst personal and financial downfall.
And he took the gun, pointed at himself, and said to her, "Do you want me to die? I'll shoot myself." And in anger, she goes, "Yeah, shoot yourself." And he brought the gun to his head and it went off.
For this video, we're highlighting those who went from earning hundreds of thousands per year to then struggling to make ends meet.
I can tell you that it absolutely ruined my life, and I went from having everything to having nothing.
Today, we're looking at wrestlers who went broke and lost all their money. Dave Batista is not someone you would have thought ever went broke following his wrestling career. However, the 6-time world champion has been very open in how he lost it all shortly after quitting WWE in 2010. To set the scene, Dave was in debt when he started wrestling and wasn't in the clear until winning his first world title in 2005. The Animal has said 2005 was his first true money-making year. He discussed these struggles on the Live Fierce podcast.
When I was wrestling, they pretty much provided you with airfare.
That was it.
And that was it, man. Like
they didn't cover your stay. They didn't cover food. Nothing.
No, not food, not cars, not hotels. Like none of that. So like my first few years of wrestling, where I was broke, man. Until 2005 when I became world champion and started to make some money. I was still borrowing money from people. Yeah. I was living in a tiny apartment when I was world champion, because I had just become world champion, hadn't started making money yet, and so I was still like borrowing money. I used to go to like those check cashing places and get like a $300 loan, and then you come back next to cash event, come back, pay it, and borrow another 300, and like do that week after week. And it was like that around 2005 is when I didn't have to do that anymore, and I started to make money. But until then, I was grinding.
Batista spent lavishly over the next few years, establishing a large car collection. He also went through a divorce in 2006. Shortly after this, Dave wanted to pursue other ventures, including acting. The problem was WWE wouldn't let him, instead giving such opportunities to John Cena. Cena and Batista were the top stars of Raw and SmackDown respectively during this period, but John was always seen as the tippy-top guy compared to Dave.
The company had taken this really PG turn, and there was nothing fucking PG about me. Like nothing. Not the way I wrestled, not the way I looked, not my background, not my upbringing, nothing. John Cena in that way couldn't be any more opposite. And so I was like, if I can't have these opportunities here, and I understand why I can't, well, I should be able to go and have them outside of the company. And they said, absolutely not. They said, no, we need you here. We need you doing this. You're intellectual property. You cannot work outside of the company unless it's approved by us. And I said, oh, well, then I'm going to let my contract run out and I'm going to leave. And they said, no, you're not. I said, watch me.
That's not really how this works.
That's why I left, and that's why I didn't go back until I landed Guardians of the Galaxy.
After quitting wrestling in 2010, Batista struggled to find movie roles. He would have seen himself as a failure if he went back to WWE.
But I went broke in those 3 years. I went broke. My house got foreclosed on. I lost everything.
Yeah.
I was in debt again.
What were you doing for work in between? Just trying to get jobs as an actor?
I worked a few times as an actor, but they weren't, I didn't get paid much. I think it did like a couple films that paid me like 50 grand each, but when you go from making millions in wrestling to making 50 grand a year, when you got all the same bills and you got people to support, because I think a lot of people lose sight of that. It's like, supporting family as well. Yeah. And so we got, a house, and I had a shit loan. That was back when the real estate market crashed. And that's goddamn balloon mortgage that went from $2,500 a month to like $7 grand a month. And so, my house got foreclosed on. I just lost everything. I was broke again. I was selling things here and there.
But finally, in 2013, he landed a part in Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. And from there, his career in Hollywood excelled to where Batista is now considered the greatest wrestler turned actor. In the summer of 1995, the renegade Rick Wilson was thrust into the spotlight in WCW as a ripoff of the Ultimate Warrior. The renegade was an ally of Hulk Hogan, with many believing this Warrior copycat gimmick was a way of enticing the real Warrior into WCW. All all so Hogan could get his win back on the Warrior from WrestleMania 6. But once it became clear Warrior wasn't coming in, the Renegade became obsolete. He'd gotten a push out of the gate, winning the television title, but his poor ring work and lack of personality meant he couldn't hold a position. As such, he fell down the card after September 1996, but stuck around until the end of 98, where he was used exclusively as an enhancement talent.
I think he was thrown to the wolves. And you know what? I shouldn't even blame that on Rick, because even if Rick would have done the best job possible with that Renegade character, I don't think the audience would have ever bought into it.
Wilson averaged around 2 matches per month, making $500 per appearance. Rick was released at the end of 1998 after testing positive for steroids. This was the company's way of getting rid of him, since others higher on the card flat out refused to be tested. Wilson was strapped for cash, having been on so little at WCW. He worked with horses and as a bouncer thereafter, since he couldn't get booked for wrestling.
Unable to escape the fallout, Wilson descends into self-destruction.
He was in a lot of financial debt, and he didn't know how to talk about how he was feeling, so he just internalized it.
I think self-esteem played a huge factor in this, and the obsession with becoming a star. But far more will fail trying to become pro wrestlers, and some of these performers, they are not equipped to be able to handle that realization.
Rick spiraled into depression and tragically took his own life, aged 33, following a domestic incident with his girlfriend in February 99.
And it's funny, after that I talked to, I can't remember the girlfriend's name to save my life, but I talked to her one night at a club she was working at. She told me that she did pull the gun on him because he was beating her up, and he took the gun and pointed at himself and said to her, "Do you want me to die? I'll shoot myself." And in anger, she goes, "Yeah, shoot yourself." And he brought the gun to his head and it went off.
Perry Saturn was on television every week during the Monday Night Wars. His highest earning year was in 2000 and saw him net a downside guarantee in the region of $250,000. He stopped wrestling in 2003 due to injuries. Then by 2007, he was illegally homeless, living in a crack house. For years, Saturn's whereabouts were unknown, as he was hooked on substances, waking up with tattoos on his face he didn't remember getting. Perry discussed his struggles while speaking to kayfabe commentaries.
I got shot and I was all screwed up, and my wife had died of drug overdose, and then I started dating this chick and she introduced me to meth. And that was it.
Perry was a functioning addict for a large portion of his career. In WCW, he went on wild benders with Raven. In WWF, Dean Malenko helped keep Saturn in check on the road, but then when Malenko retired from the ring, Perry began to spiral, but was able to hide his issues from the office because he wasn't being tested for substances.
I was a WWE superstar, for whatever that means. One day and the next day I'm eating out of trash cans, trying to figure out how I'm going to steal money so I can get high. I got myself into it. I don't think anybody can help you out of that, you know, because I had tons of friends who would have helped me, but until I was ready to make a change, no one else could help me.
However, constantly being high meant he couldn't forge the relationships required backstage to get a push or gain a foothold in his career.
Probably the last 10 years of my career that I was a severe drug addict. Amazing that I was able to make it to work as much as I did. And it's the first time in my adult life anyways, I've been clean, you know. So dealing with all that caused a lot. Drugs took everything from me. It took me a long time to get it together.
Then after being released, Saturn did a bit for TNA before retiring and eventually getting strung out on hard substances.
I can tell you that it absolutely ruined my life, and I went from having everything to having nothing, and to this day barely getting by. You know, I barely survive now. Still, a lot of times, I get my food at the Salvation Army because I just don't have any money. I have nothing.
At one point, he was ready to end it all, but kept going for the sake of his dog, who he didn't want to leave all alone. Perry resurfaced in the 2010s. He'd gotten clean and began to do more appearances in the wrestling space. Saturn even returned to the ring at one point, but mounting injuries meant he required a double hip replacement, though it took a long time to finally get the surgery. Perry has documented his journey back to health on his YouTube channel, as he seeks to walk properly again and get back in the gym.
I worked a factory job after wrestling, and that's a real blow to your ego. I happen to come and do a normal job, which maybe people are not going to understand, you know, but everybody you meet at this new job, they don't want to talk to you about you, or they want to talk about wrestling or why are you doing this job when you used to wrestle, because they think we're all billionaires, you know.
Another ex-wrestler who documents themselves on YouTube today is Maven Huffman. At the peak of his career, Maven headlined the Survivor Series during a year in which he made $430,000 once all royalties and bonuses were factored in. Believing the big checks would never stop coming, Huffman spent freely. He continued to make a good living after wrestling as a host on the Home Shopping Network.
I knew I wasn't going to be able to make a lifestyle, a career out of wrestling in the indies. It just wasn't going to happen. So I had to find out what's next for me.
One thing from his in-ring career that followed him was an addiction to pain medication. Maven was consuming up to 50 pills a day and obtaining numerous scripts from different doctors. This ultimately led to his arrest for doctor shopping in 2012. Huffman lost his position at HSN, and with the majority of his money being spent on legal fees and reducing his criminal charge, Maven had to start over at 35.
I mean, I went from, having two houses, house in Virginia, house in Florida on the water, and I mean, within probably 10 months, I'd lost all of it.
He moved in with his partner and her parents while working security at a bar in New York. Huffman would be ashamed when people recognized him from wrestling, given how far he'd fallen. Maven has said that he hated looking in the mirror during this time period because he didn't like the person he'd become.
I had everything that I owned in this world loaded up in the back of my truck, and I moved up to New York.
Maven eventually got a job working an entry-level position on Wall Street as he began to rebuild his life. Then after starting up a YouTube channel in 2023, Maven quickly became a viral star, amassing a huge following which continues to grow strongly to this day. Huffman was now more famous and popular than he'd ever been as an active wrestler. This was the final step in his redemption arc.
What took everything away from me probably ended up saving my life in the long run. Although I know the damage has been done to my body, and that's something I can't undo.
Justin Credible was someone Maven gave a platform to on his YouTube channel. Credible was given a chance to respond to the litany of claims against him. He had a history of scamming fans out of money by not shipping merchandise they'd paid for. These people would be left empty-handed, while Credible pocketed the cash. In the video, Justin only buried himself further by trying to justify his scams, while also making it clear how much of a dire financial situation he was in.
With the merchandise stuff, I would sell this stuff very cheap, and for example, $40, and then by the time you get $40 on Cash App, it ends up being $37 or whatever. Yeah. And then, I get the stuff ready, and then, by the time I buy food, I don't have the money to send it.
Following this, Justin continued to seek monetary aid from fans and friends, with many believing he was using any money he got to buy substances. Let's now circle back to how Credible got to this point by examining his track record. Like when he was released from WWE in 2003 for smoking meth in a hotel room with Jeff Hardy. Justin told the story in an interview provided by Pinfalls and Pixels.
And there was a charter flight, a private flight for just the WWE guys with Stephanie and Hunter on it. And we held up the whole plane. We didn't even, Arn Anderson's calling us on the phone. Where the fuck are you guys? You're late. You're holding up Stephanie and everybody. We're waiting to get out of here. Oh, we're right around the corner. Arn will be there in 5 minutes. We're supposed to sit here in a hotel room. And then the next day, JR pulled us aside and suspends us both. And eventually, after that, we both got our release, and it was just a downward spiral.
But he and Jeff, absolutely. I think it was Laredo, Texas, somewhere in Texas. We were waiting for them in the plane, and it took them a good 30 to 45 minutes. People were calling Jeff's cell phone.
Credible was released from WWE again in 2006 for no-showing events.
After a while, after doing continuous jobs to people like Kevin Thorne and other fucking jabronis like Mike Knox and pieces of shit that don't deserve to be in business, I just stopped showing up. Just plain and simple. I just couldn't do it anymore. I stopped showing up. Johnny Ace would call my house. I wouldn't pick up his calls. And then finally, I got a FedEx in the mail saying you're fired.
Justin mostly worked on the independent scene thereafter. Reports of him scamming fans date back as far as 2012. Over the years, Credible continued to go off the rails. He got arrested 3 times in 2018 due to being drunk and disorderly, as well as for violating a protection order. He's also apparently gone through WWE-sponsored rehab multiple times. While struggling for money, Justin continued to scam fans and even stiff wrestling promoters.
He wanted to get paid, even though he couldn't perform. And he actually went out into the crowd and asked the fans for money.
Addiction and health issues have meant wrestling a proper match is off the table. Plus, given his track record of scamming and no-showing, promotions should be very wary of booking Justin. In recent times, he spent 45 days in jail at the end of 2024 and claims to be sober since December of that year. Credible began to get himself together at the end of 2025. He dropped weight and stayed out the news cycle on his road to recovery. In 2026, Justin was inducted into the Indie Wrestling Hall of Fame, looking unrecognizable compared to his previously medicated state. Like Justin, Virgil was known for his shady practices towards fans, though they would actually get something in return when dealing with the former $1 million champion, as he'd infamously hustle people out of money at conventions by signing pictures without asking and then expecting a payment for it.
Yeah. Sandman here says, the guy basically saw me at a convention, told me to come over to him. I did, and we chatted. He saw my WWE encyclopedia and said, I have 3 photos in there. I will sign your book for $30 or something like that. I love it. And he would not give back my encyclopedia until I agreed.
Virg would also set up shop at events he wasn't even booked for. As it would turn out, the reason Virgil did things like this was because he didn't have much money left over from his career.
You would recognize it more if it was on his back like that.
It would be great if I could still make appearances with him, but he's done so many just dumb things. that make it's like if now if I allow myself to be seen with them, it makes me look like an idiot.
Virg got into wrestling quite late, aged 34, having spent time in prison during his younger days. The former NWO member got 2 big breaks in wrestling and was making over $100,000 annually while working for WCW. Although by the 2010s, most of his fortune had dried up. He wasn't a drinker or smoker, but did like to gamble right up to his final years. Over the next decade, Virgil embarked on a career resurgence, where he fully embraced his money-loving persona. This earned him some viral recognition, as he became a hilarious meme character in the wrestling social media space.
Wherever I go, I still like to show this tight ass right here. Look.
Yeah, all right, he's showing off his ass again.
I wrestled with guys they call Dwayne Johnson, The Rock.
You never
guys
wrestled.
like Steve Austin.
You did not.
Yes,
he did. He wrestled The Rock. You did not wrestle The Rock.
Yes, he did. Hold that ass like that, right? Bang, bang, bang.
Come closer, he said. Did you make a horse noise?
I will put my foot by my size 14 so deep in your ass, and then I'll shove this 14-inch dick in your mouth. Gobble, motherfucker, gobble.
Your shoe size is 14 and a half.
Yeah, but...
And length of your penis is also...
Identical.
Same size.
So you can get that foot in your ass or that penis in your mouth. Which one you want?
Serious health issues tragically befell Virgil in 2022. He suffered 2 strokes and was diagnosed with dementia and colon cancer. Plus, having only received limited bookings in the previous 2 years due to the pandemic, Virgil was at his lowest point financially. In a video provided by the Hannibal TV YouTube page, Virgil documented his sparse living space.
But we got him the bed here. That was thanks to donations. He got the bed. And then this is what he has. And if you look in the closet, just so people know, because anybody can say anything, but this is all he has.
He'd been surviving on social security checks, with all the money and donations he made going towards medical bills. Virgil sadly passed away in February 2024, aged 72. Fans remember him fondly as the former $1 Million champion and NWO head of security, not to mention his hilarious antics online.
Fuck money, baby. Fuck money, baby. Green and black. Green and black, like my skin is green and black. Fuck money, baby.
Let's continue the list by highlighting 2 separate wrestlers who were topics of Dark Side of the Ring episodes. The first being the Junkyard Dog. His career took a downward spiral amidst a dependency of substances.
I remember JY showing me a jar that he had over 1,000 hits of speed in it.
Despite a successful early career, JYD wasn't able to reach the main event in WWF. He was ultimately fired for missing events while trying to score his next fix.
Why is he let go from WWF?
No shows, the way I understood it.
Vince didn't care what you did because the drugs help you to go, go, go. But you miss shows, you scare them when you do that.
How can Vince McMahon put everything on JYD? Because you don't know if he's going to show up or not. You're not dependable, untrustworthy.
Dog forgot one thing. You can't do what the white man do and keep your job.
Fired from WWF and struggling to make ends meet, JYD turns to the independent circuit, performing in small high school gyms for diminishing crowds. In just over a decade, JYD goes from headlining the Superdome to working a part-time job at a local Walmart.
When a guy can't go buy groceries, he don't have any money, and he hasn't seen her family, it's disheartening.
Tony Atlas summed up his career as too much too soon. He was one half of the WWF Tag Team Champions with Rocky Johnson in 1983. Then by the end of the decade, the man who was once Mr. USA was homeless and sleeping on a park bench.
I was homeless for 1.5 years. I slept in the park. Didn't shower or bathe or brush my teeth or comb my hair for 1.5 years.
Atlas had gone through a tough divorce and was now strung out on substances. Tony was about to end it all until his eventual wife took him off the streets.
This here was my home, right here. It's where I slept.
Atlas got a second opportunity with the WWF in 1990. He had an 8-month run there that kept him going for a while. However, by the end of the 90s, Tony was struggling to make ends meet once again. He wasn't hooked on anything this time. It was merely an example of what can happen when the pop fades. In modern times, legends of the past can make a decent income working the convention circuit and via merch deals with the big 2 companies. None of that was possible back in the day though. If someone didn't work for WWF or WCW, there was a ceiling on how much they could make on the independents. WWE gave Tony another call in 2006 for the Hall of Fame. Then in 2008 he became Mark Henry's trainer on the road and manager on the show. Following his release in 2010, Atlas went back to working on the indies. In fact, he still wrestles several matches a year now, age 72.
I'm not financially secure. I'm not that well educated. The only thing I got left is my health and strength.
Tony is doing better today compared to the past, but his career remains a cautionary tale. When wrestlers fall on hard times these days, Diamond Dallas Page is someone who picks them up when they're down and gets them back on their feet. One of these incredible turnarounds DDP facilitated was that of Scotty Riggs. Fans remember Riggs from WCW in the 90s and ECW in the early 2000s. However, once both companies shut, Scotty would begin to struggle. He went through a rough divorce, then both his parents battled illnesses, which would ultimately lead to their passings. Scotty's mother passed away in 2020, then 3 years later, his house had been foreclosed on and he was living in his car ready to end it all.
And I just became the biggest introvert, rarely texted, rarely kept up with anybody. I wasn't attaining any goals. I just slowly, the darkness, my depression, anything that could really bring me down, I just let it bring me down. In fact, I had to live in my car after being in the house, being in the family home, and we basically lost our family home, where all the money I had saved up to take care of my mouth, to take care of the house, take care of this, it was gone. And I just pretty much had checked out on life, where I had no light in my eyes. I wasn't working out. I wasn't doing this. I wasn't doing that. And I was just existing.
That was until DDP and Riggs' former tag partner Buff Bagwell offered a helping hand. Scotty moved into Page's accountability crib, which had previously seen the likes of Buff, Butterbean, Jake the Snake, and Scott Hall completely turn their lives around. Riggs bounced back in sensational fashion. With Dallas and Bagwell's guidance, he got in tremendous physical shape, which allowed him to return to the ring for the first time in 15 years. Scotty also received brand new teeth, which he'd been without for over a decade, not because of substance abuse, but due to the lack of money to pay for dental work. This led to most of his teeth falling out over time. However, now Riggs looked like an actor or someone who was still wrestling full time.
It seems like you've done the work, brother. We want to give you a smile.
A whole new smile. Wow. That's
It's been an amazing success story for the former WCW Tag Champion.
Scotty Riggs is still a work in progress, probably will be forever, but coming through the transition stage that you were a part of, with my mouth getting in shape, my body getting in shape, my mind getting in shape, I'm still growing.
It's all come full circle for Scotty, as he's back now working for a major promotion again. Today he works backstage for AEW, providing logistical support, which includes driving talent to and from venues.
Even though DDP always tells us, find a purpose and pursue that purpose, I'm still hunting what my purpose is and just taking each day as a chance to keep growing.
Now, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out our similar video on Hell in a Cell stories WWE didn't want you to know. Hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time.